Master, as we enter Chapter 9 on Mimamsa philosophy, how does it differentiate itself from the Nyaya and Samkhya systems we just studied?
Mimamsa finds both previous systems lacking. Nyaya builds a fragile metaphysics by utterly separating substances from qualities. Samkhya creates a radical split between blind matter and passive consciousness, requiring a transcendent illusion to explain experience.
What is Mimamsa's alternative?
It turns to the immediate, self-revealing evidence of conscious thought. Mimamsa argues that no metaphysical construction can satisfy us if it ignores the direct, immediate convictions of self-conscious thought. This sets the stage for their entire epistemology.
Who were the great architects of this system?
It began with Jaimini's Mimamsa Sutras around 200 BC, which sought to rationalize the elaborate Vedic sacrificial rituals. Later, Shabira wrote a foundational commentary on these sutras.
Did the philosophy split into different schools?
Yes, profoundly. Two massive figures emerged before the time of Shankara, Kumarila Bhatta and his own brilliant pupil, Prabhakara. Prabhakara's views were so original they formed a rival school known as the Gurumata. Almost all later Mimamsa philosophy is a debate between these two giants.
What is the cornerstone of Mimamsa philosophy?
The doctrine of Swataha Pramanya, the self-validity of knowledge. Nyaya held that knowledge is mechanically produced and its truth must be verified by practical success. Mimamsa rejects this subtly.
Why do they reject external verification?
Because it is the supreme prerogative of knowledge to reveal things. When knowledge arises, it carries an immediate conviction of certainty. It does not wait for an external test. It is considered absolutely valid unless a later, contradictory experience proves the senses were defective.
If knowledge is self-validating and uncaused by objects, what is the role of our physical senses?
Prabhakara explains that while knowledge itself is self-luminous, the specific variations in our cognitions require a mechanism. We infer the existence of sense organs because we experience specific qualities like color and smell.
How many contacts are required for perception?
4. The sense organ must contact the object, the organ must contact the object's qualities, the atomic mind, or manas, must contact the sense organ, and finally, the manas must contact the eternal soul.
Does Mimamsa accept the two stages of perception, Nirsikkalpa and Sasikkalpa?
Yes, but with a unique twist. In the first indeterminate stage, Nirsikkalpa, the mind grasps both the universal genus and the specific traits of the object, much like a newborn infant perceiving the world.
Why is it indeterminate if both are present?
Because at that exact moment, memory hasn't yet supplied other objects for comparison. It is only in the second stage, Sasikkalpa, that the mind relates the object to past experiences, fully apprehending it as an individual belonging to a specific class.
How do they view universals and physical objects? Are objects just collections of atoms?
No. Prabhakara asserts that gross objects exist as distinct wholes because consciousness directly perceives them as such. Similarly, jati, or the universal class character, is not an illusion. It exists in its entirety in every individual of that class.
Did the two Mimamsa masters agree on this?
Not entirely. Kumarila believed the universal and the individual are identical from one viewpoint and different from another. Prabhakara also famously rejected Nyaya's highest universal of satta, or pure being, arguing we only ever experience concrete, specific existences.
How exactly does knowledge interact with the soul and the object?
Here the two masters fiercely split. Prabhakara proposed Triputī Pratyaksha. He says every act of cognition simultaneously illuminates three things: the object, the self as the knower, and the knowledge itself.
And what did Kumasarila Bhatta argue?
Kumarila argued that the self does not automatically reveal itself as the knower in every cognition. Instead, the self is apprehended by a separate mental intuition, recognizing itself as the I. To him, the soul is merely the potency of knowledge.
If all knowledge is self-validating, how does Mimamsa explain illusions, like mistaking a conch shell for silver?
This is the famous debate of Khyati. Buddhists say the mind simply projects the silver. Nyaya says we actively, but falsely, identify the shell with remembered silver. Mimamsa counters with the Ekhyati theory.
What does Ekhyati mean?
It means non-apprehension. Because we miss the specific traits of the shell, its shiny surface triggers the memory of silver. Illusion is simply the mind's failure to apprehend the difference between the present perception and the memory.
So in illusion, we aren't actually seeing false silver.
Correct. The perception of the shiny surface is valid. The memory of the silver is also valid. The error is purely negative, a weakness of the mind failing to recognize that the memory is just a memory.
But the person still acts on it and tries to pick it up.
Exactly. Because the difference isn't apprehended, the cognition functions exactly like valid knowledge, prompting the person to act. This perfectly preserves their rule that all knowledge, at the moment of production, is self-valid and prompts action.
How does their view of logical inference differ from Nyaya?
Kumarila holds that inference happens when we observe two things, like smoke and fire, constantly coexisting in a third thing, like a kitchen. Interestingly, he argues we do not strictly need negative instances to establish this concomitance.
So if we haven't seen an exception, the rule holds.
Yes. If extensive observation finds no exceptions, the relationship is valid. Furthermore, Mimamsa trims Nyaya's five-step syllogism down to three premises: the proposition, the reason, and the example. That is sufficient to convince others.
What about analogy, upamasana? Is it just learning the name of a wild ox?
Nyaya thought so, but Mimamsa goes much deeper. When the city man sees the wild ox in the forest, he doesn't just learn its name. He suddenly cognizes the similarity of his domestic cow, which is currently absent, existing within the wild ox.
Why is that a separate means of proof?
Because the domestic cow is not currently perceived, so it is not perception. Nor is it memory, because he never saw this specific similarity before. Therefore, cognizing the absent object's similarity requires a separate pramana, or upamana.
Mimamsa introduces a totally new pramasaina called arthapatti. What is it?
It is presumption or implication. If you know Devadatta is alive, but you see his house is empty, you must presume he is outside. Prabhakara says his absence creates doubt about his life, and presumption resolves that doubt.
Did Kumasarila agree with that psychology?
No, Kumarila argued that the knowledge of his life is absolute, and his absence is absolute. The mind cannot swallow this contradiction. It oscillates between two facts until it finds an outlet by presuming his external existence.
Since Mimamsa revolves around Vedic rituals, how do they treat Shabda, or verbal testimony?
This is their ultimate focus. They declare the Vedas are completely uncreated. They have no beginning in time, and they were not authored by any god. Their authority is absolute and self-validating.
But aren't words just human inventions?
Not in Mimamsa. They argue that words have an eternal, natural, inherent power to denote objects. Human convention doesn't create meaning. When we speak, our vocal effort merely manifests the eternal word to the hearer's ear.
How do we understand the meaning of a whole sentence, like a Vedic commandment?
Another massive debate. Prabhakara proposed and sixth Abhidhanavada. He argued children learn language by watching actions. Therefore, words have no independent meaning outside of a sentence. A word only means something as it relates to an action.
What was Kumasarila's counterargument?
Kumarila proposed Abhihaitavayavada. He argued that individual words do possess independent meanings. When spoken together, these separate meanings are subsequently combined by the mind to form a connected sentence.
Does Mimamsa agree with Nyaya that we can literally see non-existence, like an empty floor?
Prabhakara says we only see the empty floor, and no separate category of negation exists. But Kumarila disagrees with both Prabhakara and Nyaya. He establishes a sixth pramana, enupalabdhi, or non-perception.
Why must it be a separate means of proof?
Because the senses can only contact positive objects. Since the jug isn't there, the eye cannot contact it. Therefore, perceiving its non-existence requires a separate, unique movement of the mind to comprehend the negative relation.
If they reject so much of Nyaya, do they still believe in a soul?
Yes, they must, or else who would perform the sacrifices and reap the rewards in heaven? The soul is eternal, omnipresent, and distinct for each body. Kumarila considers the soul to be the sheer potency of knowledge, jnana shakti.
If it is omnipresent, how does it move the body?
Unlike Nyaya, which limits action to molecular motion, Mimamsa admits a separate category of energy, or shakti. The soul possesses this energy, and through it, imparts movement to the body without moving itself.
Do they believe God oversees this energy and the distribution of karma?
Astoundingly, no. Mimamsa is aggressively atheistic. They deny Ishvara completely. If God created the world out of mercy, why create a world with suffering? And if he had no body, how could he fashion the universe?
Then how did the world begin?
It never began. Mimamsa denies both creation and cosmic dissolution. The universe has always existed exactly as it is now. Karma operates completely on its own, without any divine supervisor.
If there is no God, what is their view of salvation, or mukti?
Mukti is achieved by exhausting all past karma. You must stop performing kamya karmas, rituals done for worldly desires, while strictly maintaining nitya karmas, the mandatory daily duties, to prevent new sins from forming.
What does the soul experience in this liberated state?
Nothing. Since the soul is divested of the mind and senses, it cannot experience pleasure, pain, or knowledge. It remains in its pure existence as a mere potency. There is no bliss or ananda in Mimamsa salvation.
It seems their entire philosophy was built just to protect the Vedic rituals.
Exactly. Epistemology and physics are secondary. The core of Mimamsa is analyzing Vedic injunctions, or siksthis. They categorized commands. Apurva enjoins a totally new action, while Niyama 6 restricts you to a specific method.
What about the parts of the Vedas that just tell stories or describe things?
Those are Arthavadas. Since the Vedas' only purpose is to mandate action, mere descriptive sentences are considered useless unless they are interpreted as praising or supporting a specific ritual injunction.
But Master, a sacrifice is a physical action that ends in an hour. How can it produce a result like heaven years later after death?
That is the ultimate mechanism of Mimamsa, Apurva. When you perform a sacrifice correctly, it generates an invisible, positive force or faculty within your soul, called Apurva.
So it acts as a bridge across time.
Precisely. The action fades, but the Apurva abides in the agent. It is this mystic potency that eventually matures and delivers the beneficent results, carrying the soul to heaven without the need for any god.